Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, IAM Ledger for Accountants. IAM Ledger is perfect for your clients who do not track their accounts with any accounting software. In this webinar, you will get to know IAM Ledger's fully featured tax platform and lodgement function, and we'll demonstrate the core features of general ledger, debtors, creditors, bank feeds, a range of reports, and a few other smart features that I'll introduce you to. The purpose of today's webinar is to show you how you can use the IAM Ledger for Accountants app in conjunction with your clients and the value you can gain, both will gain from it. IAM Ledger is a simple app that allows you to work, gives you the power to work faster and smarter. We've packed a lot of value into today's webinar, so without further ado, let's see what's on the agenda. So we'll look at the dashboard and what information you can get from the great valuable information you can get from the detail on the dashboard. We'll look at bank feeds, debtors, creditors, the general ledger, reports, tax return preparation, lodgement, and some Intel Smarts. In terms of bank feeds, we'll go over importing, bank rules, allocating, and reconciling. When we look at debtors and creditors, we're going to look at the dashboard and the information on there about the debtors and creditors. We'll look at how to set up the debtors and creditors in IAM. We're entering invoices and entering bills, comments and queries you can leave on the bills and invoices, and some various reports you can use to analyze your debtors and creditors. We'll look at the general ledger, both the summary and detail, and also look at the trial balance. We'll look at some various reports that you can use relating to the accounts, such as your jobs, profit and loss, your budget comparison report, your standard financial reports, such as your P&L and your balance sheet, and the financial statements. We'll look at other reports other than those relating to the accounts. We'll look at things like the sales by customer, purchases by supplier, the sales register, the sales by item, and the expense detail report. In terms of tax preparation and lodgement, we'll look at the BAS, the income tax return, and how the preparation and lodgement function is built into IAM. We'll look at the lodgement history and save reports features. And a few of the Intel Smarts that we'll look at the back end of the webinar include estimates, the filter function, the fantastic quick add feature, and various settings you can use to customize the IAM setup for your client and for their your client's business. The basic accounts is the demo company that I've set up for today's illustration and today's webinar is a psychology practice, and the accounts are for the current year. The other demo that I'll use 3 parts of the way through the webinar is just to illustrate the income tax return, and it's for the 2021 year. So for the dashboard is a great snapshot of the business as at today's date. Now, I'll go into some more detail later in the presentation about the features on the dashboard, but quickly, just as a quick overview, basically at the top here you've got a summary of your cash receivables and a summary of your cash payables. Below that you have a graph, which is it paints a picture of your cash flow throughout the 12 months from July to June, and you can see that at the moment we've only got the cash flow figures for the period from July to March, so that's why the rest of the graph is just a flat line. But once we roll over to the end of the year, this will obviously paint the rest of the picture of the cash flow for this business. Below this, we have a listing of receipts, or can we say receivables that are owed to us. So these three these three invoices represent the total amount that's owing at the top here. So the $520 in receivables is represented by these three invoices down below here. And similarly, these payments here, or these bills, these are the payables. These are the amounts that make up the payables of $1674. So that's a great way to basically find the bills due and the invoices owed to you or to your client as at a particular date. Below that, we have another couple of graphs. The one on the left-hand side is a cumulative P&L report, and the one on the right-hand side is a budget versus actuals, or should we say actual versus budget column chart, showing the actual versus budget on a monthly basis. Scrolling down, we have a donut report showing the top expenses for the business for the 12 months or for the 9 months to date of the financial year. And on the right-hand side, we have a listing of the account balances for the various bank accounts that we have set up in the accounts. And here we can see that we've got $22,000 in the bank account as of today's date. And finally, below that, we have some reports relating to payroll, some great summary reports, and a graph here, again, relating to payroll. So that's the dashboard. And as we progress through the webinar, I'll introduce you and provide more detail on each of these graphs and summary figures so that you can get a better grasp of the information available and how you can use this information to provide better advice to your clients. Bank feeds in IAM Business are efficient and easy to use. To access the bank feeds, you would go to the left-hand side menu, click on Banking, and click on Bank Feeds. And then you would select the appropriate account that you want to import the bank feed for. In this case, it's for the transaction account. And here we've already imported some transactions for earlier this month. I'll show you just quickly how you go about importing the bank feeds. So you go up to the top right-hand side here and under Import Statement. Then we've already selected the appropriate account, which is the transaction account. You enter a description, and then you would then format your file as a CSV file based on one of these three column types. So one column with type, or 2 columns, and then select Choose File. Find the file that locate the file on your desktop or in your folders, and then simply click on Import. Then once those transactions have been imported, they will then appear in the bank feeds screen, like so. One thing you can do with the bank feeds is set up bank rules. To do that, you would then click on Manage Rules at the top right-hand side. Click on Manage Rules. And we'll just quickly, just for illustrative purposes, I'll just quickly add a bank rule so you can see how that's done. So click on the right-hand side again here under New Rule. And in this case, we'll enter a rule for the annual premium for workers' comp. So click on expense rule. Give it a name, so workers' comp. All right. In the description, we would say the description is annual annual premium. The expense account it goes to is under the insurance, and under workers' comp, we won't fill in the customer or the supplier details. We can actually, in thinking about that, we'll actually just select workers' insurance as the supplier, select GST 10% as GST as a tax code, and select tax inclusive. Click on save. Then if we go back to the bank feeds screen, and there we have it. We have a bank rule now set up for annual premium, and it's going to be, this transaction will be allocated based on that bank rule that we just set up. A couple of other ways that you can allocate transactions in the bank feeds. You can either allocate the transaction directly to an account. So say, for example, professional association seminar. We'll just click on this one and I'll show you how that's done. So you click on, it's an expense. Just for the exercise, I'll just, for illustrative purposes, I'll just show you how that's allocated. So expense account, call it professional development. In the tax cost box, select GST 10%, tax inclusive, and the rest we won't worry about. But for that exercise, you see how that's all completed, and then you then go on and click save. For the moment, we'll just leave that and cancel that allocation. The other thing you can do is to allocate the transaction to a bill or an invoice. In this case, I'll just, once again, I'll show you how that's done. You would select, we'll allocate the amount received for an invoice. So in this circumstance, we'll select the fees received for the $200 received on the 2nd of March. We'll click on that one there. And I ask the customer payment, and we know it's from Mark Smith. So select Mark Smith, enter Mark Smith, then select Mark Smith. So we have the invoice from Mark Smith. We've located that invoice in the system here, and we then allocate the payment to the invoice. So enter $200. And then that matches that payment with that invoice. So that invoice will now be closed. But again, we won't close that invoice. Instead, we'll just click close to cancel that. So once all the bank feeds are allocated, you would then go on to reconcile the bank. And to do that, you can look to easily reconcile the bank by comparing the balance on the balance sheet to the balance on the bank statement. Or the other thing, you can compare the balance up here on the top left-hand side to the balance on the bank statement. One other feature to highlight is the bank register. Among other things, here you can add bank transactions manually, like customer payments or supplier payments. And I'll just show you how that's done. So you then go to add transaction, add a customer payment, or add a supplier payment. IAM Business is a complete accounting system with debtors, creditors, and payroll. In terms of debtors and creditors, at the start of the webinar, we looked at the dashboard, the bird's view of your client's business. And in particular, we looked at the debtors and creditors just briefly. So just quickly revisit that. So on the dashboard, we've got a summary of your cash receivables on the left-hand side here. On the right-hand side, we've got a summary of your cash payables here. Then further down the page, we have the transactions that make up the total of the cash payables and cash receivables. So in terms of the cash receivables, we've got an invoice for M. Smith that's owing, an invoice for J. Smith that's owing, and an invoice for John that's owing. Similarly with the cash payments or the creditors, we've got a bill payable to Rita, a bill for workers' comp, bill for professional association, and a bill for ABC software. Now, if we just quickly have a look at one of these, so we'll have a look at professional association. So this will take you directly to the bill itself. So it's a quick way to actually access that bill, that outstanding bill to be paid. So here we see, yeah, it's a bill and it's from professional association, and it's for a seminar, and the total cost is $330. So we'll quickly get back to the dashboard. Now, where do you start with the debtors and creditors in terms of setting those up, and your suppliers and your customers? So you would enter the customer details and the supply details. So in terms of customers, you would enter the details under sales, in the sales menu, and select customers. Then you simply just go to new contact and enter the customer's details. And you can complete the, obviously the items in red are compulsory items, and the other ones are optional. Similarly with the setting up your suppliers, under the purchases menu, you select suppliers. And then similarly, in the same way as you do for the setting up customers, you select new contact for your suppliers, and then go ahead and fill out just click on this. And then similar to the customers, enter the compulsory information, which is the information in red, and enter the optional information if you choose to do so. In terms of entering invoices, fairly straightforward. Sales, under sales, select invoices, and then select view invoice. And then fill out the relevant details. One of the great aspects of IAM Business is the ability to set up items. So in terms of, for the psychology business that we have here, you can select one of the session types that I've set up. And then that will then pre-populate the rest of the options in the invoice itself. So to set up the items, you would go to under sales, select items, and here's the items that I've set up for the purposes of this business, the psychology business. In terms of purchases and entering bills, select purchases, and then select bills. And then similar to the when entering the custom invoices, you then select a new bill, and then go ahead and enter the details and save those details. In IAM Business, you have the option to enter comments and queries against invoices. So I'll just show you how that's done. So if you have a couple of colleagues working on the same client file, you may want to share the workload and leave comments for the other colleague to follow up in due course. So if we just had a look at this invoice for, say, Mark Smith, the one that's owing for $200, you can then actually add a comment. So click on add a comment, say, please say, please check details. Then you can add that comment to the invoice itself. And in a similar way, you can add a post a query in a similar fashion. In terms of the reports for the debtors and creditors, there's a couple of excellent insightful reports that you can use to monitor the debtors and creditors and do some analysis on those. So a couple of those reports, I'll just go through the transaction listing, the receivables report, and the payables report. So the transaction listing, you can actually go to if you go to under sales, click on sales and then click on customers. Then if you select one of the customers, say for example, Mark Smith, and then click on transaction, you'll see the actual invoices raised for Mark Smith since the start of the business, so since July last year. So that's a quick way of accessing those invoices. Similarly for purchases, to click on suppliers, then click on, say for example, ABC software, click on transaction, and you can see here all the invoices bills for ABC software since the start of trading July last year. Another report I'll show you, two reports, is the receivables and the payables, and they are located under the accounts menu. So under reports and accounts. So we'll have a look at the receivables first. So remember from the dashboard that we had a total of $520 owing to us from 3 customers, and here's that number, and the breakup of that number reported in a different fashion. So basically, we've got a bit more detail. We can see that Jake Johns owes us $160, Jake Smith owes us $160, and Mark Smith owes us $200, giving a total of $520. In a similar way, you can have a look at the payables. So click on reports and the accounts, and then select payables. And remember also from the dashboard that we had an amount payable to suppliers of $1674. So there's that figure there, $1674, and that figure is made up of amounts payable to 4 suppliers: ABC Software, Professional Association, Bridge Rentals, and Workers Insurance. And here's the breakup of those amounts. And we'll just go back to the dashboard. Now we'll look at the trial balance, general ledger summary, and the general ledger detail reports. To access the trial balance in IAM Business, go to Reports, and then click on Accounts. So it's under Accounts, and click on Trial Balance. And we just want to have the trial balance for today's date. And then we can see the trial balance for this business as at today's date. So that's the trial balance for in IAM Business. Now look at the general ledger. First off, we'll look at the general ledger summary. So to access that, you go to Accounts. So it's in the Reports menu and under Accounts. Then click on General Ledger Summary. Again, we'll run it to today's date. So we'll make it the 24th, the 3rd. Run the report. So it's as of today's date. Here we can see the summary. There you can see the summary of the general ledger. Most critically, let's have a look at the general ledger detail report and what that does in terms of how that can help you with your business and helping the client with their business. Again, we put in today's date. We just wait till this report runs and then appears. And here we have the general ledger detail report. And we'll quickly go down to fees received account. There's the fees received. And what we can do with this report, we can click on the balance of one of these transactions here. Now this takes us to the journal behind the transaction. And if we click on the actual journal itself, it takes us to the bank transaction listing for that transaction. And just while that's loading, now we see the bank transaction listing for that transaction, the 160 from the general ledger detail report. We'll look at some reports relating to the accounts in IAM Business. At the start of the presentation, we looked at the dashboard and the great information that you can gain from the detail on here. We've already looked at the debtors and creditors side of things on the dashboard. Now we'll look at the accounts reports and how they can benefit you and how you can help your client. So first off, we've got the cash flow graph, which I'll quickly touch on. So I know we've been through this earlier, but I just wanted to reiterate the value within this report. So essentially, it shows us the cash flow movements from month to month throughout the financial year. So you get a great idea and a great sense of how your client's doing in terms of the cash flow. If you scroll further down, we've got a couple of great, neat little reports that show us around the profit and loss. So the first one is on the left-hand side here, is a cumulative profit and loss report. Essentially, it tells us the growth in the profit or the movement in the loss from month to month, and it tracks that profit and loss as the months move on throughout the financial year. So in this circumstance, in this particular example, we can see the profit has grown gradually each particular month, and then up to then for the month of March, it has dipped a little, but in the months prior, every month it has grown in a positive fashion. The report on the right hand side, or the graph on the right hand side, illustrates the profit and loss versus actual versus budget for the 12 months, well, across the financial year. And in this particular case, we've got the figures in for the up to the month of March. So just looking at the grey versus the blue bars, we can see that generally the grey bars are a lot higher than the blue bars, which means that we're not reaching the budget for each particular month. So we see the month of September, October, November, and then again January and February, we're behind on budget. That said, we did have some positive months where we basically equaled or exceeded budget, which was in July, August, and December. So you get a great sense, a great feel for how your client's business is doing, just quickly by looking at that graph and understanding what that means. The other report I just quickly touched on here is this donut presentation. Essentially, you get a quick understanding of the client's top expenses quickly by moving along the donut. So initially, when you see the donut, you can see straight away see that professional development is the top expense of 2,172, and then you can that is a conversation starter to see whether that number is firstly accurate, but secondly whether that's on budget. So whether that's contributing to the fact that they're behind on budget per the graph up here. So then certainly then you can talk about the other expenses with your client, the workers' comp, their subscriptions. Certainly, you know, if that figure is on budget, higher or lower than budget. So you get the idea. And one of the great things about IAM Business is the fact that you can run a jobs report, a P&L jobs report, which basically gives you the opportunity to analyze the data, your P&L, based on job categories. So, say for example, in the psychologist example, I've allocated income based on whether it's Medicare income or whether it's private income. And I'll just show you how that all sort of works. So if you just click on reports and click on accounts and click on jobs profit and loss, we'll just run this report for up to date, which is the 24th of March. 24th of March. So here we can see that for the income that I've categorized, and I haven't categorized all the income, but for that income that I've categorized, you can see what portion of that income is relating to Medicare income and what part of the income relates to private income. So here in this example, we've got Medicare income of 4,440, and we've got private income of 8,250. So straight away we can see that the majority of the income is being generated from private fees, and a lesser portion of that is being generated from Medicare income. So we can really start to generate strategies to grow that private portion of our income, and possibly look to just maintain the Medicare income, and depending on what the client wants to do and how the business is structured. But yeah, there's certainly, that's one of the types of learnings you can get from this particular report. So that's the sort of information you can get from this type of report. and the sort of information you can use to have a discussion with your client about their business and how it's tracking, and whether that compares to what your client really wants to do. Is that what they aim to do, or are they heading down a path that they didn't necessarily intend to go down? So it's a conversation starter. So the other thing that you can do with this report is to click on one of the total here, and you'll actually get a transaction listing for all those transactions that relate to Medicare. So quickly you can see all those. I know that all these ones are only 160, so you can quickly see that all those invoices or all those income that relates to Medicare. Similarly, you can do the same thing with the private income. The other thing I'd like to show you is the budget report and the profit and loss versus budget. To access that report, you go to Reports and then click on Accounts in that menu. Then you click on Profit and Loss and click on Budget Comparison. And for this report, you just select the month that you want to run the report for. So it's July to March. Click on Run Report. Okay, so straight away you can see if we know that we've been behind on budget for a number of different months. Now you can actually drill down and find out the particular accounts that you exceeded budget, or you were behind on budget, or how you measured up against budget. So straight away we can see that for the 9 months to March 22, we said the fees received is 10 grand less than what we budgeted for, and that's a shortfall of 27%. So essentially, the reason why we're not meeting budget is our sales aren't high enough. So to actually create the budget in IAM Business, it's very simple and straightforward. You simply go to Accounts. Next, you go back to the Home menu. And click on Accounts. And click on Budget Entries. You enter the relevant details in the relevant boxes. So it's a grid type format. And one of the things you can actually do, just say, for example, your client would pay accounting fees on a monthly basis. And let's just say that the annual spend was 2,400. So let's just say that you can actually enter 2,400 here as the total, and then this IAM Business will then actually allocate to the $200 each month accordingly throughout the year. So that's a great time saver there in terms of entering the detail. So we'll just make this 0 again. So you'd actually go through and for each of your accounts, you would then enter the budget figures. So say, for example, if we go to fees received, we estimated to be $50,000 for turnover. Let's just change that to say $40,000, and then we'll actually go back to the budget report. which is then if we go to reports and then go to profit and loss, budget comparison. And then if we run this report for July to March. Okay, so now it's telling us that for the period, because we adjust that, we adjusted the budget in the grid. We reduced it down to $40,000. In terms of the budget, we're now only behind by $2,690. Okay, so that's a fair result now. So that's probably more realistic in terms of what we wanted to achieve for the financial year. I'll just quickly show you the profit and loss. Profit and loss report. You can run the profit and loss on a cash or accrual basis. So you can run it by as of today's date, which is the 24th. Click run report. And here's the figures in here for, there's a profit and loss for from the 1st of July to today. So that's on an accrual basis. If you want to run it on a cash basis, just simply change this option here to cash, then run a report again. And there we have it. So it'd be slightly different, but of course, there's a balance sheet in IAM Business. I'll just quickly show you that. So click on balance sheet. And here's the balance sheet for, just run it as of today's date. And run report. And there's the balance sheet as of today. And probably one of the most important reports that you'd be interested in having a quick look at is the financial statements. They are located under the accounts menu in the report section. And then if you click on accounts, and then if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, click on financial statement. Now just imagine we got to the end of the year, and then you prepare the draft accounts, review those, made any relevant adjustments, then prepared the financial statements. Here is the relevant financial statements that you would see. So it's got all that you need as part of the financial statements: the P&L, the balance sheet, the notes, compilation report, and the director's declaration. And I'll quickly just walk you through these. So there's the profit and loss, the balance sheet, notes, the compilation report, and the director's declaration. IAM Business has a great range of interesting reports that will help you understand your client's business better and enabling you to provide better advice and with great clarity. Just like to quickly look at 6 types of reports available in IAM Business to do with the sales and to do with the purchases. In terms of sales, there's 3 reports that I'd just like to look at: the sales by customer, sales register, and sales by item. We'll quickly have a look at those now. So just the first one, sales by customer. This gives you the opportunity to see how many sales you've made to each particular customer. In this case, we can see that with these 3 customers, say for example, Jake Johns, we've made 2 sales to Jake Smith, 3 sales, and Mark Smith, 3 sales. Then I'll actually show you the total amount that has been invoiced to the client when you combine. So the total amount for the financial year, and it shows it both with the total amount and the total amount with tax. The sales register report shows a listing of all the sales made for the financial year. I'll quickly show you what that looks like. So you just click on sales register. And here we can see a list of all the sales made where an invoice has been raised for a particular customer. Obviously, there's been a lot more sales raised, and we've just, in terms of accounting, we're actually just recorded as fees received. We haven't raised invoices for those. But for these particular listing, or these particular customers, we've actually raised, or these transactions, we've raised invoices for these. And so that's why they appear in this report. And the final report I'd just like to share with you is the sales by item report. So click on sales by item. Now, because we've set up items in the system, we can then start to analyze the sales by items. So in this case, basically we've got a number of items sold. So for psychology sessions, 50 minutes, Medicare sessions, we provided 5 of those services, and giving a total of $800 with an average price of $160. So again, there's at least 2 purposes for this report. A is to basically check the data, so to ensure that the data is correct. And in this case, we know that we only charge $160 for Medicare, and so that makes sense. The second advantage of this report is that you can actually then start to analyze the units sold for each particular item type. So the second listing here is the private sessions. We've sold 3 of those services at $200 each. So now we'll look at the purchases reports. And the 3 reports I'd just like to look at is the purchases by supplier, purchases register, and the expense details. So we'll quickly jump in and have a look at those. So purchases by supplier is similar to the sales by customer report. Basically, in a similar way to the sales by customer report, we can actually see that the number of units that were sold, the number of units purchased from a particular supplier. So in the case of, say, for example, ABC Software, we purchased 9 of those, and I know that is correct because it's a monthly direct debit, and the total was $396 in total with tax, $360 without tax. And then we can actually see that we've, so for example, the software company purchased 9 of those, 9 of those transactions, and the total was 986. So it's a great report that you can bring up straight away, and you can immediately see how many purchases you've made from particular suppliers, and determine whether that number appears reasonable. Select the sales register report, the purchases register. The purchases register shows a listing of purchases by supplier name. And it shows a listing of those from 1st of July through to 30th of June. Well, the report would show that. Obviously, at the moment, we're just up to March. So I've only got purchases in this report up to that date. Yeah, so it's just a listing of purchases. So the expense detail report shows a listing of the expenses where no invoice has been raised in the system, or no bill, should we say, has been created in IAM Business. So it's a straightforward report, but again, it's another tool you can use to analyse the accounts and to provide value-added advice. Now I'd like to show you 4 of my favourite features of IAM Business. Number 1 is estimates. This is just another name for a quote or proposal that your client might like to send to their clients when they're looking to gain extra work or new additional work. To access the estimates, you go under Sales menu and click on Estimates. And here's a list of estimates that are currently in the system. So we send an estimate to Jeremy Joseph and Michael Green. To create a new estimate, click on New Estimate, the top right-hand side. Very simple and straightforward process to do this. Enter the details with the compulsory details in red. Got the rest, and then you can save and send to your client. Or your clients can then send to their clients. Number 2 is, not number 2 and number 3 is a couple of handy little features that are real time savers in IAM Business. Firstly off is the filter functionality. We'll just actually quickly go back to the Bird's View dashboard screen first. So as I just mentioned, the filter functionality. So if you just click on filter, here's a range of options you can use to locate or find particular bits of information in IAM Business in your client's file quickly and efficiently. So say, for example, in the banking, we wanted to find the transactions on the 1st of July last year in the transaction account. You quickly go to the bank account, click on the transaction account, enter the date. So we'll just enter the 1st of July. 1st of July here, and the 1st of July here. Enter 1st of July, then we click on search. So this will bring up a list of transactions just on the 1st of July last year, in which it's done perfectly. The other thing you might like to do is to say, for example, you want to search for, say, those estimates that you sent an estimate out. You can't remember whether it was last week or the week before, and so you wanted to follow it up. To find those estimates, you click on Estimates, and you can actually just, without filling in any details, you can just click on Search. And this will bring up a list of all of the estimates that you've sent. Okay, so you just click on Status. So we see the two invoices or estimates that were sent today. So we've got here one for Jamie Joseph, one for Michael Green. That's a fantastic feature that'll save you lots of time and save your client lots of time also. So save you lots of time in terms of when you're preparing the accounts or when you're analysing the accounts, making sure that everything marries up. If there's anything you need to find, you can certainly use this filter feature to find a particular transaction, in a particular date period very quickly. The other function feature I'd like to share with you, which is another great time saver, is the quick add feature. It's just this cross in the middle of the top bar, the top blue bar. You just click on the cross, so you can actually quick add all the different types of transactions in IAM Business. So say, for example, you want to quick add a invoice, just quickly go to the quick add function at the top in the middle blue bar, and then click on Invoices. And there it takes you right to the invoice, enter new invoice screen straight away. Saving you those extra little steps you had to go through before. You don't need to necessarily do that. You can just go to the quick add function here. And so for example, you want to enter an estimate, quickly it'll take you to that page. And then we have the estimate page. Again, you don't have to go through those other little steps that we just walked through just before to create an estimate. Quickly just go to the quick add function, find estimate, click on that, and then you'll be taken to the relevant page. The final aspect I'd just like to, one of my favorite features is the ability to customize IAM Business to your client's business. So essentially, if you go to the cog here and click on More Settings, and you can be heavily involved in setting this up for your client, probably more so than that would be absolutely recommended, because you know how you like things set up, and then you can discuss the setup with your client to ensure that they're happy with it. So a few of the things you can customize you can customize for your client for their business is email templates. So for example, we've got a couple already set up in the system now. So we've already got one for a payslip and we've got one for a transaction. So you can go ahead and create further ones of those. One of the other things you can do is if we go to the direct preferences options, there's some options you can complete and customize for estimates, customize for invoices, your credit notes, and your delivery note settings. And the other thing you probably, well, you would be doing is entering opening balances. So you can do that on this particular page here. And it's just a case of just grabbing the data from your client's previous file, whether it's in another software, and then entering the closing balances from that software into the opening balances for IAM Business, and then making sure that balances to start off with. IAM Business is a fully featured tax preparation and lodgement platform. For the purposes of this presentation and showing you the functionality around tax lodgement and tax preparation. We're going to use a different file. In this case, it's going to be Key Proprietary Limited. And so we're on the dashboard of Key right now, and we can see again the same presentation. We've got the menu on the left-hand side here, and we've got on the dashboard, we've got no payables and no receivables at the moment. We've got the cash flow graph for the full 12 months. We're actually preparing the tax return for 2021 year. So we've got the graph for that fiscal year or that financial year. Again, IAM Business uses the term fiscal year. Again, we'll just bring up the reports for the previous financial fiscal year. So here we have, on an accrual basis, the profit and loss for that period. And we can see it's just over 7,500. And again, we'll do this, run this on a budgeted, but we didn't actually enter any budgets in, so it doesn't really matter. So for the previous fiscal year, just for completeness, we'll just set these up. So what we're going to do is just to show you how we prepare a company tax return in IAM Business. To do that, you would go to Reports and down to Company Tax Return. And it's a very seamless, straightforward process in IAM Business to prepare the tax return. Basically, you would check these details against the financial statements. We're running the incorrect year here, so just change this year up here. Run the report again. So here we've got 10,920 in sales, and then $2,500 in expenses, and then as I said, about $8,500 in profit. And then we've got some amounts reported in the current assets and total assets box. So then to prepare the tax return, all you would do is then click on Publish. And just while that's publishing, so we've actually prepared a tax return already. But we want to actually overwrite the figures in the current tax return. So we click on Overwrite. And here I'm not going to go into too much detail, but essentially if we go to the information statement page, and then we look at, so here in the tax return we've got 10,920. You haven't actually entered these figures in. These figures have come straight from the financials of in IAM Business. So 10,920 as we just said, and then the expenses of 2,520 or 2,508 is there, which gives us a taxable profit or total profit and loss of 8,412. Then you'll go through your normal process and check the rest of the tax return, enter any details where necessary, and then as you would normally do, click on errors to see if there's any errors that you need to fix. In this case, there's no errors at all, so tax return's fine. So then you would click on up here, Save and Lodge. So if you're happy with the tax return as is, you can send it to your client by clicking on Save, Validate, and Send for signature. And then you would submit, and that would then be sent to your client for digital signature if they're set up for that purpose. Once you receive the signed tax return back from the client and you're happy with it, you then obviously then go to Lodge and then Submit again. One of the excellent aspects of IAM Business is that what sits on the desktop or on the home screen is access to the tax return itself. So under My Lodgements, you've got a history of the lodgements made and the saved tax returns that you've created in the system and are sitting there waiting for lodgement. So if we just click on Save Reports, here at the top one, you can see the 2021 company tax return is has been created and saved, which is the one we just did just now. And you can go back to that one at any time and make amendments to it prior to lodgement by clicking on Edit. And that will then bring up the tax return ready for editing. So we see how that works there. We'll just close this. And under the history, once that tax return is lodged, you'll then be able to see in history the particulars of that lodgement. You can also produce and lodge BAS returns through IAM Business, and it's done through a similar process. Then the reports, then IAS BAS. We'll click on previous year and click on September, the September quarter, to run the report. Then you go to generate the report and then follow the prompts to lodgement. IAM Ledger is specifically for accountants. IAM Ledger is a simplified version of IAM Business. It does not contain debtors, creditors, or payroll. It has less reporting features, but that said, it does contain budgets, the ability to import a CSV file of the client's data, three reports on the dashboard, as we'll see in a minute, and extensive accounts reports. So just in terms of the dashboard in IAM Ledger, it is a simplified version of the IAM Business dashboard. There are 3 reports here. And I suppose you call them the main reports, the ones that, you know, because we don't have debtors and creditors here, we don't have those reports on the dashboard. So what we've got is a cash flow report up the top here, again, which is basically shows the inflows and outflows across the 12-month period. And at the moment, it just takes us up to March. So to get data into IAM Ledger, you'd either import it as a CSV file or bring across the data from either your client's QuickBooks, MyOb, or Xero files. Or, as I just said, you can bring the data across as a CSV file. Like IAM Business, in IAM Ledger, you can create a tax return, create an income tax return, and lodge it through via the software, IAM Ledger. And the same thing for your BAS returns. You can also do that just under the Reports tab or menu, click on Taxation. And finally, and probably most importantly, is that IAM Ledger directly links with GovReports. So any lodgements that you make through IAM Ledger is recorded as lodged in GovReports. So you got that tracking, that interconnectedness between the two platforms, makes the process a whole lot easier.